I, like a lot of other Steam users, have a pretty big Steam library. So, just like a normal person, I decided to dedicate as much of my free time as possible to these games. Mostly by just picking which one to play while looking at both Metacritic and the fantastically demotivating website howlongtobeat.com, but also by playing said games. I had a lot of fun during most of these playthroughs, while others drained me and made me put them down, and some just didn't really work, so I did the same to those. This year was going to be different from the previous. I have played enough Super Smash Bros. Melee, CSGO and Minecraft to last my entire life, so let's try to change that by playing some new stuff. And why not try to become a cultured gamer while we're at it? Hi, I
think I want to nominate this award to my Reformed Orthodox Rabbi Bill Clinton.
But you can simply call me Amazon. This year I challenged myself to play as many games as I could muster. This is the list if you want to pause and look at them. A combined amount of about 50 or so games of varying lengths. Let's not stick around this part of the video titled Intro for any longer and get into the next one, appropriately titled. I'm starting this video with a look at a few new titles I played this year, titles that were released in 2022. I start with this category because I didn't really play a lot this year. I played Elden Ring on release. I did the same with both Stray, Neon White and LEGO Star Wars, The Skywalker Saga. I also played some Teardown a bit after release, but just for a couple of hours or so I'll just leave that one out. The thing about the games I did play that came out this year is that they were all so very different. But it's still obvious who will win. But before we talk about the winner, let's look a little at the runners-up. First, Stray. Somehow Stray made it all the way from obscurity to nominee in the Game Awards. To me, this is absurd. I thought that Stray was good. Sure, but definitely not over an 8, not even close to the winner. It's closer to LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, a game I made a video on, than the winner. One game that came out of nowhere and totally shocked me was Neon White, a game we'll see in a couple of other categories later, I'm sure. Neon White is a game about getting to the end of a short, timed, and often enemy-filled level using the excellent movement and innovative weapons and their abilities. It became part of my daily routine for about a week to go for lower and lower times in a game almost made for speedrunning. I found secrets and made strategies. I beat some times and I had a lot of fun. But it ultimately lost me a bit in the end when I realized that this was all the game had to offer. It's a great game, but also very samey. That's what leads us to the winner, which is, drumroll please, it's Elden Ring, obviously. I mean, it's not even close. Elden Ring is one of the biggest releases of all time, for good reason. It's a really, really good FromSoft game, with another new spin on their Demon's Souls formula. We're now in an open world, a twist that sounds really bad, but works out oh so well. I don't want to talk too much about it, but if you've played the game, you know that there's this amazing moment when you beat the first kind of hard boss and walk out of the back of his castle. The already pretty big map expands into the distance, now instead seemingly endless. It's a great moment that sums up my experience with the game pretty well. Also, the Mimic Tear is overpowered. With the most obvious category out of the way, let's move on to a bit of a weird one instead. Let's look at the best movement in the games I played this year. I often praise, but even more often criticize games for their movement. I find it pretty obvious that the way you move in a game should be a top priority, but for some reason it very often feels left out. The nominees range from movement-based games to top-down bullet hells, so let's look at what might stand a chance. First of all, I want to praise the driving in Dirt Rally, another game I made a video on. It's realistic and unforgiving, but getting a good time, turning a perfect corner, or winning a race is one of the most satisfying things I did this year. Super Mario 64 also has excellent movement, so good that if I played it for a couple more hours, I might have never stopped playing it and gotten down into the rabbit hole that is speedrunning. I also played Titanfall 2, with movement smoother than butter and gameplay almost as smooth, but I have to admit it wasn't as good as I expected. The wall running is really cool and the grappling hook even cooler, but I really wanted a dash or equivalent movement mechanic to do last second adjustments. Skate 3, yet another game I made a video on, has movement to literally die for. If I get to play Skate 3 in heaven, I'll be happy for the next couple of months. The way it makes you retry a trick over and over and over can't be for nothing. But even this couldn't dethrone the winner. Drumroll please. It's Neon White. I talked a fair bit about this game in the last category, but the movement in Neon White is simply immaculate. It makes you root ways through its many maps, really making you think while still being able to do last second saves and adjustments. Truly movement perfection. This category isn't as weird as the last one, so you can settle down for a bit. Best Classic might be a bit cryptic, but let's just try to decipher what it actually means. I categorize a classic as a famous game from before around 2005. Think Metroid, Half-Life and so on. I dedicated a lot of my time this year to playing some of these many classics, 3 of which I made a video on in my series The Quest to Play Everything. These were Doom, Metroid and Super Mario 64, but neither of these was the best in my opinion. Instead, let's look at Spider-Man 2 for example. Spider-Man 2 should have honestly been mentioned in the last part, because everything that isn't movement in this game kind of sucks. But that's just it. I have well over 20 hours of pure swinging in this game, and I still haven't finished it. It's a classic for sure, and definitely the second best Spider-Man game. I also played Splinter Cell, a game that really impressed me with its opportunities in its stealth mechanics and many cool features. But it also made me realize that pure stealth games can be really boring and frustrating to me at times. The winner instead is, drumroll please, the 2003 RPG Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, KOTOR, if you may. This game made me realize that I do like RPGs, because I haven't liked the many I've done my best to enjoy. KOTOR, however, swayed me to the camp of a fan pretty quickly, not because of its story, but because of its world building. Knights of the Old Republic's world is amazing and filled with characters that are even more amazing. This year I played a lot of big games, both in terms of time, but most relevant in this category, I played a lot of AAA games. This is the category where we drop the billions of dollars into a trash can and look at some truly original and experimental stuff, or just really well made indie titles. First of all, I want to highlight Hypercharge Unboxed, a round-based tower defense, first/third person shooter with a Toy Story aesthetic. This game took over my life for about a week, and a great week honestly, but also a week where I realized that this game needed a lot more depth outside of its enemies, which it also needed more of. But as an indie title, it really impressed me. I also played some Teardown, a game with a title so appropriate that it alone makes it worth a look. Teardown has debatably the best destruction physics in any game, the best smoke physics and the best fire physics. But I ultimately felt myself getting bored of its gameplay loop and focus on its gimmicks. They are excellent gimmicks, but it didn't hold my attention for more than a couple of hours. This is where we get into the really good stuff, however. I played the walking sim / detective game / time loop extravaganza called The Forgotten City this year. The first thing I want to tell you about it is the fact that it isn't as simple as it seems in the beginning. So if you're planning on playing this masterclass in detective game design with a really cool time loop gimmick, don't give up too early. But the winner of this category isn't a walking sim. No, the winner of Best Indie Game of the Year goes to, drumroll please, Furi. I have never in my entire life been so close to quitting and never coming back to a game as I have with this one. The top-down bullet hell style gameplay of Furi is hard but ultimately always fair. It's the formula that made me blast through the game in a week, but it also made that week only about Furi. Its bosses are amazing and the movement is smoother and more fluid than anything I've ever played in a game like this one. Also, the soundtrack of this game is outright perfect, with classics that still ring in my ears. Truly a must-play and a full-on masterpiece of a 10 out of 10. This might be the weirdest category of them all. Why would I rate Call of Duty campaigns in their own category? If you're one of the people who paused to look at what games I played this year, you'll see a lot of Call of Duty. So I figured they needed a category to themselves. As stated in the title of the category, I'm only awarding a title based on its campaign. So without further ado, let's get into it. I played the entire Modern Warfare trilogy because I never had before. I'll start off with a bit of a hot take. I don't think Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare was the best of the CODs I played. Now settle down. I didn't hate Modern Warfare. It had its moments for sure. The bomb scene comes to mind as one of them, but I ultimately liked the others a bit more. The winner of this category isn't subtitled Modern Warfare. When I played World at War, I was kind of amazed by how brutal it was. The first scene being literal torture. And an even better example is the first level in Russia. Laying on the ground, dying, waiting for the enemy to finish you off. This excellence led me to play Call of Duty 2, a game that felt ahead of its time when I played it a couple of weeks ago. But I can't give it to this game. It has its amazing moments, but it's still a bit too outdated. Mostly in its controls and movement. I mean, this game doesn't even have a sprint button. The winner was pretty hard for me to pick here, but I think I have a pretty good answer for you. So, drumroll please. The winner is Call of Duty World at War. The focus on the Japanese side of the war and the many moments that brought was amazing. But what was somehow even more spectacular was the Stalingrad part of the campaign where we meet Reznov to assassinate a Nazi within the grey Russian city, engulfed in flames. Best narrative is here by necessity, because there are a few games that I really want to talk about that went above and beyond in their narrative and world building, but then either stumbled and fell in other parts, or they were just walking simulators, which is fine. This round of games made me think and also sometimes laugh. It made me retry and redo, and it made me actually listen to its dialogue. First of all, I want to shout out the Stanley Parable Deluxe Edition. I would have put this in for the winner of this category if I hadn't played the original a couple of years ago, because the Stanley Parable is genuinely one of the funniest things ever if you're invested in the gaming industry. Even if the additions in the retread that is the deluxe edition is frankly awesome, I can't really give it to this game. I mean, then I would have to put The Last of Us Remastered in the Game of the Year category, because I've never played its remaster until this year. But again, shout out to the Stanley Parable, awesome game. Instead, let's take a look at The Forgotten City. A game that truly shocked me with its many twists and turns. The game's many encounters with its many NPCs are a treat, and the time loop gimmick remains the coolest gimmick in any media ever. I played a lot of games with great narratives, but I have to admit that making this category was made easy by the obvious winner. The winner is The Forgotten City, a game that is really hard to talk about without spoiling everything. But let's try. You have to basically ascend to heaven and talk to God himself, to let you out of the peril that is being stuck in a time loop in a small Roman-aged town. The graphics, the many storylines and the perfect storytelling kept me engaged for the entirety of the game. A really good piece of narrative and a great use of the medium. This category is called the Quick Round because I didn't want to call it honorable mentions. This category is just me shouting out games I really liked, but didn't fit into the other categories. So I made them their own categories here in the Quick Round. I played a lot of games this year, most of them because they're supposed to be really good. But this leads me to the fact that if there's a number one game topping the list that is this video, there has to be a game at the very bottom of the list. I don't like Another World. Not because it looks bad, which I don't think it does. Not because it's too hard, but because it needs more checkpoints. It's so very frustrating dying by a seemingly random thing to then have to redo the last 5 minutes of gameplay over and over. My guilty pleasure from 2022 was definitely Bloons Tower Defense 6, a game that has a DLC to get double the money. We have all played a tower defense game, but what made me play this one so much was because of its seamless and near perfect multiplayer. I had a lot of fun here, and I kind of want to make a video dedicated to the game for real, so maybe vote on that in the future on my Patreon. I also want to shout out Superhot for having the best slow motion feature in a game ever. A game that I played in a browser like a lifetime ago. This year I finally finished it for the PC. A game that is pretty cool outside of its gimmick. Not enough to be any more than the winner of Best Gimmick. The best chill game outside of Bloons is House Flipper, a simulator I spent a couple too many hours on perfecting houses instead of making videos like this. To end out the quick round, let's all agree that the Guardians of the Galaxy game is probably the most underrated game of the last few years. Seemingly a shovelware title to get free money from Marvel fans that turned out to be a great third-person adventure game for anyone who wants to experience a truly AAA title with great visuals, an amazing soundtrack, and in my opinion, great gameplay. There are few games that I call truly superb. These games include titles like The Last of Us, The Witcher 3, Doom Eternal, and after this video, Fury. This list doesn't get additions very much. Maybe I'm picky or just very bad at picking stuff that is truly great, but let's try to distill this year into a single game, the winner of the prestigious Game of the Year award. I want to preface this with the fact that this is more of a favorite game of the year than a kind of objective best game of the year award. I have 3 games outside of Fury in this category because that game is actually one of my new favorite games of all time, but I think that one category is enough for that one, especially in such a significant category as best indie game. Instead, let's look at Kingdom Come Deliverance. Kingdom Come Deliverance is the best simulator I've ever played. Its world feels more real than almost any I've ever played, with a combat system that breaks out of the mainstream and became truly original, even if it does suck sometimes. I also played both Mafia Definitive Edition and Mafia 2, 2 games that really wowed me by being so goddamn focused and polished while still being set in an open world. I have to admit I stand outside of the crowd of Mafia 2 lovers, however. I did like the first one a great bit more. It's such a polished and great story with good gameplay and even better presentation and a satisfying ending. But This game didn't wow me outside of its narrative and polish, two things that I like, but never really focus on when looking for a game to play. And that's why Kingdom Come Deliverance, a game filled with countless bugs, a lackluster last act, and clunky and hard controls, is my game of the year. As a little end to the video, let's put all the videos I made this year into a tier list in the order they came out. So here we are, the illustrious tier list. I like making these, especially on subjects I know a lot about or have a lot of opinions on. Let's skip past my rambling and put some thumbnails on a list. The first video I made this year was my first giant video retrospective about Call of Duty Black Ops 2. This is the shit I want to make in the future, hour-long analyses of stupid video games. With that said, I think that this video has its moments. Its peaks are some of the best stuff I've ever made, like the ending of the video. I go back to watch that even today. Like once a week I go look at the last 10 minutes or so and just revel in its perfection. But at the same time, the first hour or so of the video kind of sucks. It's obvious that I recorded in almost hour-long segments and talked way too quietly. I'll put it in the A tier, basically ignoring the lows and only looking at the highs, some of which I feel are unmatched even today. Next is a video I made after seeing the Metacritic score of Dragon Quest XI, titled Dragon Quest vs The Witcher 3. This is the most clickbait title I've ever made, and the video does some stuff very well, but it's also kind of just a big rant about the gaming industry's huge boner for comparing stuff. It's fine. C tier. About a week later I made my first video that is not about a game, the one on Euphoria. First of all, I know now that you can't get an Oscar for a TV series, so that on its own puts this right next to the last one. C tier. This part of my YouTubing career has in retrospect proved to be a bit of a slump, because the next video I made is the one on LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, a video that kind of sucks in my opinion, so let's not look at it anymore and just put it in the F tier. After this I went deep into a The Last of Us trance, playing and writing about the first game in the series. But I took a break in the middle of it to make a video about Doom from 1993, starting a new series of videos about me making my way through the entire gaming catalog, one classic at a time. I don't dislike my Doom video. It's great at times, but what I don't like is my performance in it. I sounded dead in this video, but it's actually pretty good even after that, so B tier it is. I then went back to making my The Last of Us video, releasing a couple of months after the Doom one. I have to be honest here. The Last of Us video is the best one I've made so far. I both enjoy the pretty lengthy section focusing on the gameplay and the walkthrough of the story, but the best part is, again, the ending of the video. I think that this is the best single 10 minutes of video I've ever made, by quite a bit. S tier. I then jumped on my skateboard and made another video about nostalgia, a topic I love to speak on. The Skate 3 video is the first one that blew up to over 1,000 views this year, making it a bit of a landmark, standing at a whopping 2,800 views right now. I really like this video outside of the long-winded explanation of the gameplay. A tier. I followed this video up with the video on Metroid from 1986, a game that I turned out not to like, which came with some negative comments. This video also kind of blew up, so that's cool. It's a good addition to the Quest to Play Everything series, but not a masterpiece. B tier. Battlefield 1 is a game that I often think about, so I made a video just about that, and it stands as one of my favorites. I feel like I couldn't have covered the part of the game in a better way than I did, but the ending of the video kind of fell flat compared to what came before. Almost awesome. A tier. I then sat down in my Toyota AE86 and drifted into various obstacles in Dirt Rally, a video that I think is kind of awesome. It acts as a great look at a game that I spent an hour or so a day in for about 2 weeks. I also really like the title and thumbnail. A tier. I drifted then into Project Zomboid, one of those survival games. I love Project Zomboid, but I think that the video I made isn't as good as I wanted it to be. For example, my mic sounds like shit in that video. There are black bars on the top and bottom of the screen for some reason, and the ending isn't that great. Oh, and this video also totally blew up, hitting 15,000 views within a week or so. But let's put it at the C tier and regret it later. Last but not least, I made a video about Super Mario 64, the third episode of the Quest to Play Everything. I really like this video honestly. It might be recency bias, but this video is my favorite of the series, but not by much. B tier, next to its brothers from the Quest to Play Everything family. Here are some rankings from my subscribers and Patreons. Note that my placement of the Black Ops 2 video is somehow not controversial, and the fact that the Last of Us video is the best by far. That's about it for this video. This year we managed a couple of big videos on the channel and 2 huge retrospectives totaling over 6 hours of content. If you combine this with the other videos on my channel, I released over 9 hours of video onto the internet in 2022. Instead of giving you a rambly and boring update on my life, I'll just give you this. I moved out. If you want more, look at the Patreon. So, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next year. Oh, you're still here? Well, on screen you'll see the games my patrons call their favorite games this year. But that's it. Now, go away.